Have you recovered after the weekend, Trimble?
Not really. No, I think there's going to be a lot of recovering over the next number of weeks.
What's happened? What is wrong?
France at home do a reasonably good South Africa impression in terms of that physicality and that physical confrontation, and we did not meet that one bit.
What England have done, Borthwick's just taken them back to their DNA. So they've got tough, loose forwards, they've got hard-working front five, play a really good kicking game, and they can now have got outside backs that can actually do something once they get over that advantage line.
The one thing I want to see is, can they stand up against the physicality of France or the Springboks?
Well, Welsh rugby's in crisis, really, really kind of deep crisis.
JK can't say anything technically because you don't have a coach in New Zealand. You don't know what you're doing at the moment. So we'll just stay away from that.
That's more depressing, Ricardo, is it not?
Did you apply? You've got international experience. Did you apply, mate?
Right, welcome back to Rivals for 2026, and your nice drink bottle, JK. Well, interesting start to the Six Nations. France and England look unbeatable, and it doesn't look like Ireland's going to win a game.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I think this has been coming for a while, hasn't it? I was the middleman. Whatever happened during the Rugby Championship, kind of November, not so much, but now it's time for me to get a bit of heat, and rightly so. Ireland are looking fairly shoddy. I think everybody's worried over here, but not surprised. I think in anticipation of the game, we were going, right, we're going to get smashed at set piece. Scrum's going to struggle, lineout's going to struggle. Those were the only two things actually weren't too bad. They survived okay. Defense was brutal, couldn't catch a pass. Breakdown was a disaster, and France were incredible. I thought France were unreal. I
don't understand that at all, because like you've gone from World Cup favourites, obviously getting knocked out. What's happened? What is wrong? You can't go from, and why? I mean, A, what's wrong? B, why were you surprised? Because I was surprised.
I feel like it. Well, I mean, if you watch the South Africa game, Ireland South Africa game in November, that was kind of the level of physicality that we were at, and the beating. We were just second best by a million miles that day. Now I know comparing to South Africa is not like comparing to anybody else, but France at home do a reasonably good South Africa impression in terms of that physicality and that physical confrontation, and we did not meet that one bit. But as I said, I thought it was going to be elsewhere, set piece. But physically, France were incredible. Gilliard, the big second row with the dreadlocks, was just skittling lads left, right, and centre. And then once they got that physical dominance, then the offload came, and the subtlety came, and the pace came, and the X factor came, and the French crowd got into it, and we were chastened massively. It was a lesson learned. I think there's probably, from an Irish perspective, there was 15 or 20 minutes in that second half where, you could easily say, oh, there's a lot of character shown. I think there's something in that where they can maybe go from there, and they can base, okay, actually we can be reasonably competitive with ball in hand. If we get tempo, if we get our breakdown quick, we can get round the corner and threaten defences. But it was, there's slim pickings from that. Everything else, we were second best. And I thought France were incredible. That French backline, the pack did the job, and then they just flung it out wide, and they let their pace and their X factor do the talking, and they put on a show at Stade de France.
Trimble, you said last week somewhere, you said we're back to the 90s. You don't think this is like an end of a golden era for Ireland rugby? Ireland rugby had like a golden era, but do they have enough players, enough talent come through to be at that level for, let's say, 40, 50 years? Or was this really like a golden era that's just coming to the end, and the new talent coming through isn't quite up there?
Maybe. I don't want to be too dramatic about it, because I do feel like there are a couple of things in that Irish performance that can be fixed. Defensively, we can front up. I think even that 15 can front up, that 23 can front up way better. I think they can fix some things around their line speed. They can fix some things around their defensive breakdown. They can create breakdown pressure, get their width, get that line speed. There was a couple of long floaty passes from France, and we can sort that out. So there are a few things, quick fixes. Things can change quickly, but so France had maybe 5-6 years ago, the 10 years before that, France were pretty dormant, pretty they were a rabble. They didn't really have much going on, and they were scrapping together performances, changing teams, changing coaches all over the place. South Africa had a barren period. Saw that. England, just with Eddie Jones, had a difficult period. But the playing population in those countries is so huge. The pendulum's always going to swing back. In Ireland, 4 provinces. If one or two of those provinces don't go so well, we've got 2 Irish provinces playing in the second tier. We've got Leinster, not quite. They got a good draw in Europe. They're going to be maybe one of the favourites. Maybe 2 French sides, Toulouse, Bordeaux, maybe third favourite in Europe. So they're close enough, but they're not the Leinster that they were whenever you're talking about that generation, that couple of years of Irish dominance in world rugby, and they looked incredible. So whenever Ireland or Wales or Scotland drop off, I think it takes maybe longer for them to bounce back, whereas you see that bounce back initially from those bigger rugby countries, because there's so much weight and momentum in those countries, and there's such rugby pedigree in them. I think it takes us a little bit longer to bounce back, and that's the worrying thing. If Ireland do drop off, you wonder, could this be for a little bit longer than it would be elsewhere?
Have you got
And
too many
Trimble, on the
foreigners?
defence side, Leinster going really hard, like Jacques Nienaber, South African style. Doesn't look like they're quite the same with Ireland. Is there like an in-between that they're not sure what they're doing?
Yeah, that's what I mean, it's so funny. Irish pundits and commentators, they're scrambling around trying to find someone to blame. So we've got if you're not from Ulster, Jacob Stockill gets the blame. If you're not from Leinster, if you're from Munster, Sam Prendergast gets the blame. Some people are blaming Jacques Nienaber for Ireland at the weekend. So this is like the theory around.
I saw it.
It's so funny. It's just now whatever about the skill set and the pass, catch pass and everything like that. But I suppose maybe disrupting that Irish defence and bringing in something that I think is formidable. I think South Africa have showed that if it's implemented correctly, it's the best defence in the world. Break down pressure with line speak, make reads, and it's really difficult. It just strangles opposition. Leinster haven't quite got there with it, but as a result, they've caught there's a little bit of confusion, maybe going back and forth between Irish camp and Leinster camp. There's so many Leinster guys training one way and then playing in blue one way and then playing different in green. But I thought we saw the worst version of it at the weekend. For me, if you just bring in the Nienaber, if you just bring in line speed shooters, if you just create that chaos plants the seed. Do I throw this pass? Do I not throw this pass? The uncertainty around decision making with that French attack. It needed, now Gary Ringrose is probably the one guy who shoots up, makes decisions. He's brave in defence, but he just got 1 or 2 reads wrong and just got beaten into that hole by that French attacker. And yeah, it felt like. It felt like they didn't do either well. They didn't do what they did in the past, that Irish defence, and they didn't do the Leinster defence. So, it feels like there's some confusion. And it is hard to go back and forth. What's up, Ricardo?
You're getting me down. I've just come back from the summer break. I was feeling good about myself.
I know.
Let's look at France.
Let's get Victor to tell us about his World Cup, by the World Cup wins. Just a quick pump up our tires here, and then we can get back to it.
JK can't say anything technically because you don't have a coach in New Zealand. You don't know what you're doing at the moment. So we'll just stay away from that.
That's more depressing, Ricardo, is it not?
Did you apply? You get international experience. Did you apply, mate? We had 13 applications. Right, we had 13 applications.
You're right.
Down to 3. The three that I think are Jamie, Joseph, Dave, Rene, but I don't know who the third is. And I was just saying before, it could be Warren Gatlin, but I'm pretty sure they're making the decision in the next week or so. So we'll be back to having a coach, Victor. So it's a massive year, mate. It's a massive year for us.
It's the beginning of a positive story, isn't it? It's the beginning of a positive story. We now have a coach. Well done, lads.
Yeah. Little steps, mate. Let's look at France. I mean, although Ireland weren't at their best, I mean, France were outstanding.
I'm interested to see what the ceiling could be of this French side. We all know how emotional French sides can be. If they get off to a start like that and they get their tails up, it feels like they're unbeatable at home. Now, Dupont obviously best nine in the world, one of the best players in the world. But then just marry that with Jalibert and what he's been doing with Bordeaux, and you've got two absolute magicians. And it shows you what the rest of world rugby, certainly the Irish perspective is. Well, maybe those two are they're two rock stars. Maybe it's hard for them to coexist in the same team. Well, they coexisted extremely well at the weekend, and you probably add Ramos to that list as well, and the X factor he brings in. So once they get the dominance up front, then they get to showcase what they're capable of, and they were incredible. The other thing about that French performance is the occasion in Stade de France. JK and I were just talking about it before we came on. It was like a nightclub before. You had flamethrowers, lights, disco. It was absolutely amazing. If you're a neutral and you're not into rugby, that's how you win the hearts. That's how you create a fan experience. It was amazing, and then that was matched by that French performance. I thought the whole evening was incredible. Even though there was a sadness in what I was seeing in front of me from an Irish perspective, but it was still an incredible evening of rugby to be a part of.
Ricardo, can you organise someone to deliver me a coffee, please, mate?
No, I was just wondering what
organised.
What's your butler's name?
Cheers, boys.
Yeah. So what did you think, Victor? You haven't said much apart from put the knife into JK. What did you think of France?
I thought I've said it the whole time. I think, especially the next World Cup, France will be South Africa's biggest opposition to win it a third time. I mean, the previous World Cup, everyone thought so because it was at home and it was really close. And I think they still got a young team and they still bringing new players in every time. You think they set on certain players, new guys come in, and they just outstanding. And again, if you look at European rugby at the moment, Bordeaux and Toulouse, probably the two teams dominating that. And if you put those players together, the flair that they've got, the physicality up front, big, strong forwards, and then, I mean, you named it. I'm a big fan of Jalibert. I just think he's outstanding for Bordeaux, for France, and for a long time, I think they tried to keep him out to keep that spot for Nuntamak. I just think he's so much better, and he'll bring so much more to that French team.
And JK, do the French have the best winger in the world at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think their whole backline, like Trimble said, I've played France some days where you're just chasing shadows, and when they get that, some of their big men with their offloads, they used to call it a sort of Villepreux style, right? So before the tackle, just after the tackle, that into passing, and then for a little man, like just one of the greatest finishers, So I actually agree with Trimble and Victor. I think this side, and he left some of his most famous players out, right? So he didn't pick, and you talk about Nuntamak, but if you're going to win a World Cup, you need two or three guys in each position. So like Victor mentioned, when France play All Blacks in the final in Australia, it's going to be a really interesting game, because South Africa are going to lose in this thing. But
you must just get past the quarterfinals first.
I'll just have another drink out of my drink bottle. No, the interesting thing for me is that the physicality that France has brought, and I think they made a mistake in the last World Cup. I think, they played Dupont for too long after his 4 weeks out with an injury. So they'll learn from that. I don't think you can just win a World Cup straight off, but they've got the experience, they've got the mix, they've got young guys coming through with physicality, so they're going to be tough, man.
And let's just pivot to the England team. I mean, I know that Wales are far from their best at the moment, but that's I think it's 12 wins in a row for England.
Yeah, Borthwick. I think what England have done, the mistake that England have made when they've had bad runs, you got to realise they have one of the greatest pools of players in the world from a numbers point of view. But Borthwick's just taken them back to their DNA, right? And they play with their English DNA, right? The forwards, they've got tough, loose forwards. They've got hardworking front five. They play a really good kicking game. And they can now have got outside backs that can actually do something once they get over that advantage line. But they won't do it until they've won position and possession in your half. I mean, we saw it with the All Blacks in November, and I just think Borthwick's doing a great job of English DNA, and it's bloody hard to beat.
Yeah, I also think they're going to be a tough team to beat. It will be interesting to see the French flair almost against the English structure and knowing exactly what they want to do. But again, I think that halfback pairing of England is very underrated. Both of them are playing outstanding rugby. George Ford at 10 is just dominating and he's controlling everything. So, yeah, the one thing I want to see is can they stand up against the physicality of France or the Springboks? Those are probably the one thing that I'm not sure yet. Game control and knowing what they're doing, they definitely there. And I mean, they've got all the flair on the outside as well.
Yeah, Victor, I don't like to jump in, but I just want to remind you that South Africa aren't in the Six Nations, mate. Like, not yet.
I just say, we're talking about the next World Cup. We're talking about
you're talking about the next World Cup. Okay.
But JK, just remember, if South Africa was in the Six Nations, they would win it.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Probably double winners.
Yeah. At least 4 in a row.
Probably be double winners.
We'd vote them out straight away. We wouldn't want them.
I mean, the hardest thing, Trimby, how bad are Scotland and Wales?
See, Wales are terrible at the minute. Really bad. Welsh rugby's crisis. Dropped down to 3 regions. Most Ospreys players are probably expecting to be out of a job at the end of the season. So Welsh rugby's in crisis. Really, really kind of deep crisis. Scotland, you know what Scotland are like. They could get beat by Italy and they could beat England next weekend. Scotland it's the very Scottish thing to do that. So this is, to your point, Victor, England they've had not an easy run. They've been under the radar a little bit. They haven't really been tested. Now they look really promising. They're doing everything right. Their game's coming together. They're playing with more confidence. The structure of their game, everything looks really formidable. But they just haven't been tested, and I'm interested to see when they're tested. And I think maybe Scotland might test them next week. Scotland are always so emotional against England.
I think so as well.
Yeah, and I just wonder what could happen. And then France at the last game of the Six Nations, that could be a big one for them as well. I just think we'll find out. We didn't find anything out about England at the weekend. Like what we thought about England before the Welsh game, you kind of shrug your shoulders. It was a captain's practice for England, effectively. Wales didn't turn up. They just went through 3-4 phases. The game was summed up a little bit when I think there was a crooked throw at the line. No, sorry, someone hooked someone's arm. Maybe. Anyway, there was an infringement of the line out against England. And Jimmy George, you heard him in the captain's on the ref's mic, he said, no problem. As if like, okay, don't worry about it. We will have the ball back very soon. And we'll get the ball back, no problem. And we'll smash their scrum and we'll be able to pick up where we left off in a couple of minutes here. And I just summed up the difference between the two teams. So we didn't find out anything about England. They're still under the radar a little bit. I think they might get tested this weekend, but they'll definitely get tested against France.
I think Scotland and Ireland will test them as well. I think Ireland will push him really hard. So I still think the French is in a different class. I think Scotland and Ireland will test England.
I hope so, Victor. I hope so. But that maybe just demonstrates the difference in mindset in Irish rugby at the minute. I hope we go to Twickenham and give them a go. But it feels more like hope than kind of expectation, to be honest.
Has Irish rugby lost its self-belief? Trimby, is Irish rugby lost its self-belief?
A little bit. It feels like it, and I suppose we didn't go on. Certainly didn't go to Paris thinking, right, we're going to give them again. We went over there thinking, who knows, and now we're going into the Italy game thinking, look at the way Italy are playing. They in the conditions in Rome last weekend against Scotland, they played some decent rugby, more rugby than would be kind of pragmatic or advisable to play in that. And we saw Louis Lina jumping up, catching the ball with 2 hands. We saw Menincello racing down the way. Like, it was all their big names, all their big players winning collisions, doing what they do best. Their line speed was really good, defence really good. Set piece, Ireland are going to be tested at the scrum as well. So I don't even think we're thinking about Twickenham yet. We're actually worried about Italy coming to town next weekend to get things back on track for Ireland.
JK, you're a former Italian coach. Tell me about what you saw of the Italians.
Oh, look, I just think they're incredibly well drilled. I've been saying it for a couple of years. I think the coaching staff are doing an amazing job. And Italy also used to have a DNA, which was big scrum, guys like Castro Giovanni, Lo Cicero, Ongoro, but they're playing a really nice mix of rugby, what Trimble said. And it seems that they're working a lot on their individual skill. Italy in the past, you might have seen them make a nice break and then someone would just make a really basic handling error. But I think the coaching staff's doing a great job. I think it's a really good style of rugby that suits them. And you don't want to underestimate them. I think the surprising thing for me was that Scotland seemed to not be able to put 80 minutes together because they're pretty good for sort of 20, and then they sort of went off the boil. But, this Italian side does not go away. So I was really proud of them. I think they're coached incredibly well and playing it pretty well. And they do have, for the first time in the backs, like you talked about, Minicello and Liner, and those guys are some of the best players out there at the moment, which is important in the Six Nations. They'll take their opportunities.
I think you mentioned, Trimby, about the Welsh. JK and I are a little bit older than you guys, and so we were brought up on the great Welsh players of Barry John, Gareth Edwards. They're the most inspirational as we were growing up, JK. That's fair. They were some of the Phil Bennett. There's a real sadness from rugby people about where Welsh rugby is at the moment because it's had such a big part of developing our game. And is there a way out for them?
I'm convinced that certain countries, the franchise model doesn't work, and I would put New Zealand in that now. Now that the South Africans have deserted us and left, I think that we need to get back to tribalism and traditionalism, and I think that Wales have made a mistake by going to franchise model. I think the Welsh people in the valleys care, they go, they sing, and I don't know if you can ever get it back, but I think it was a mistake going to those franchise models or not recognizing early enough. They probably need 5 sides that should join the English competition because they need week in, week out. They need the young guys to be playing against top opposition. So, you think about the franchise system, and this is a question I got for you, Trimby, are there too many foreigners now if you only have 3 provinces? You've got as many South Africans and New Zealanders and Ireland as anywhere else. And I think it's the same with Wales. You think about, 3 franchise going down to 2, how many foreigners are you going to have? If you've got 5 foreigners per side, that only gives you 10, 20 Welsh people playing per week. In South Africa, you've got all your provincial side, you've still got the old system underneath. We've still got the NPC system underneath our Super Rugby. So at least our pathway is good. But Wales, what do? So they're in real trouble, and it's a management problem. They need to get some great leadership there and really sort out what's going on. But it's competition and high performance. They took out the first thing Wales did, because I asked them last November, asked a couple of Welsh guys that I trust, and they took out the high performance as a cost cutting thing. You can't take out your high performance trying to make money because then you run out of rugby players.
So the tribal thing, JK, is an interesting point. The franchise model, how it doesn't work in maybe smaller countries where there's more kind of more like a visceral nature and emotional nature to that rivalry between Irish provinces or Welsh regions, for example. Yeah, you like there's probably a ceiling to where that goes, like commercially, but then once you go into that different model, and it does feel like that, and there'd be even some Irish voices would be out there saying, well, yeah, you want a kind of central model. They want everything to be centralized and efficient. Centralized kind of third parties and tech and data and all this sort of stuff, and processes and coaching philosophies and all that. But then you lose that as a result. So it maybe makes the pathways more efficient, kind of getting towards international. But you lose a little bit of this is what makes Munster, makes Ulster. I mean, you've got Kieran Frawley moving from Leinster. He's not getting enough game time. He's gone to Connacht. You've got Connacht scrum half going to Ulster. You've got lots of Dublin accents in Belfast. You've got lots of Dublin accents in Munster. And there are some Irish, I don't think I agree with this actually, but there are some Irish voices say, well, you lose. And like, what's the heartbeat of Irish rugby? What's drove the Irish rugby machine has been that Munster-Leinster rivalry. Now, it was back on for a couple of weeks after the game at Croke Park, where Munster got on top of them, but it's kind of off again. Kind of feels like it a little bit after the game at Christmas. And there's been a mismatch for the last 5 years. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I sit on it. It's an interesting point, JK, and maybe that is the case in Wales as well.
Victor, tell me about it, the South African view. I mean, you've still got the Sharks playing the Stormers. Does it still mean what it did?
Yeah, it does. I mean, whenever the South African teams play each other, it's sold out stadiums. But I'm on JK on this one. I think for us, yes, we only have our 5 teams playing in the URC and then Europe. But underneath that, we still got our old Currie Cup. And the Currie Cup is like the NPC. It means a lot to the people of South Africa, to the real fans. And I mean, we had Griquas beating the Lions in the final. Yes, all the top players don't play there, but just the amount of players that get opportunity at the highest level at an early stage now. And we also allow most of our top players to play overseas. So there's even more players coming through and getting opportunities at a younger age. So for me, whenever I've seen it in Australia, Wales, wherever they go and they make the teams less and there's not enough players to select from, then I don't know, how can you get stronger? You want as many players as possible to get opportunity. Yes, I know financially, maybe sometimes it doesn't make sense and there's not enough money to support that. But if you want to grow your game, you need more players playing at a high level, I believe.
What scares me is you've all had a summer break, and after all the nonsense you spoke last year, you're all coming back with a bit of intelligence and well thought out comment. So I think we should probably end the show there because, we don't want to spoil our run. So
I'll get nosebleed.
Yeah. So let's enjoy a round of the Six Nations, and we'll see you all back next week.
Good luck,
Nice one,
Trimby.
fellas.
Good luck, mate.
Cheers, lads.